going to reach towards another generation and invite people in. And those people will come in and they will see what the woodworker has in his art shop. And hopefully the business will continue to grow as it goes. So Helen and Henry. Helen is a dear soul. She has some health issues. They probably won't come out until about the third book. In the second book that I'm working on right now, a new little character is going to appear. And she's sitting in a rocking chair near Helen. This is the next book that's coming out. A Winter Wonder in the British Quarters. Somebody is in shock. And they're not squatters. They're not fairies or leprechauns, although they certainly act like them, and they know all of the leprechaun and fairy stories. But they're there, and they're trying to earn their keep there. And so that story is going to develop about this little girl who cherishes her doll and brings her everywhere. Helen and Henry haven't met the little girl yet. They meet her near the end of the second book when they find out what she's been doing in the shop. And they take her under their wing. So that's the group of characters in the series. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask? No?
Going back to your biopsies, and the one was on the back, you said you left it open.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Did you put your blouse over it, or did you?
No, it was covered with bandages, but it wasn't sutured. It wasn't stitched up. It was open in physical sense.
I thought it was open.
Not exposed.
Okay.
No, in fact, that was why I worried about the bandages. My dad had an allergy to adhesives, and we thought it was because he was in fire. He was a fire chief in Boston, and he was in a factory fire that dealt with many adhesives in making carpet and furniture, and he was exposed to those burning gases, and as a result, he was always sensitive to any adhesives, and his skin would become really raw if he had a bandage on for more than, I'd say, 45 seconds. It would pop out that fast, and if it stayed there, it would become raw and uncomfortable. And I've had some issues with bandages, and so I'm careful of that, maybe even a little paranoid. But that's probably self-protective in its own right. And so that's why I worry about that. So they do cover them with bandages. The weekend between the first Monday and the second Monday, when it was finally completed, I actually ended up in the hospital because I had a twist in my back. Somehow I turned wrong when I was getting out of bed that morning, and it just pulled a muscle or something in my back. And I went in, and because I was there, the nurse took a look at this because we knew that he had to change. I couldn't touch it for 24 hours. Then he had to clean the open wound. We were going on 6 days at that point. He'd been doing it each night since the second night. And she said, "Oh, I'll do that with you." And so they both did the wound care together. So he's become quite a skilled health coordinator.
Home nurse.
A home health aide.
Well, it's going to need to
he's
be because
everything.
they're losing their jobs.
I know. But we both have learned so much medical information in going through the MS, the neurology, all of the testings, and the pharmacology. I did finally write a letter to the FDA and express my concern about these medications that they have now proven through 10-year studies are totally ineffective in terms of delaying the progression of multiple sclerosis. They've admitted that they do nothing. And they never claimed to treat any symptoms. The symptoms can be treated with other medications, but not with these particular injections. They were only supposed to slow the progression, and they don't.
Terry, everything's intertwined in the things that you've written. Is that deliberate? Did you set out when you moved to the fiction rather than the non-fiction to intertwine the things you've written previously?
The elderly piece of it is a reflection of my thoughts following retirement. What do I do with the rest of my life? I wanted so long to be a teacher. I was 33 before I was a classroom teacher. I had a lot of other jobs in the meantime, but it took me that long to get a position. And I absolutely loved it. I loved teaching. I loved the kids. I loved the material. I had what they called the golden ticket. I had a K-8 certification, which they don't offer anymore in Massachusetts. I also had a special education nursery through 9th grade certification, which took a lot of work to get it, but I got it. I got a master's degree. I never in my wildest dreams expected to go to graduate school. And my first boss in a public school system said to me, "Get your master's degree. I'll help you find a program that's half price off campus." And she did. And that's how I straightened out the special ed certification piece of it. And then I became many things in the school system. I loved it. I did everything I could do, everything I was trained to do. And I learned something new every single step of the way. It was the most exhilarating environment to work in. The kids were something new every day. My colleagues were something new every day. They all had so much to offer the world, and it made me feel so competent and so productive. And that was a really good feeling. And that's what I lost when I agreed with a doctor that I basically disagreed with, disbelieved in. When I allowed myself to agree to go with this treatment, I let myself down, and that bothered me, and it made things worse. And when I stopped and I walked away from it, I became me again. So I had to figure out, now what can I do? Okay, I'm 60. I do have something. If it's not relapsing remitting MS, and they say it's not Parkinson's. Again, I don't know what it is, but I have something. I have a tremor. My handwriting is getting worse. I have a poor memory for names, particularly names. When they do their testing, they look at MRIs. You have lesions, you have black holes where lesions used to be. I just equate myself with Stephen Hawking. When they tell me that, I think, oh, well, okay, he understands what black holes are. And now I'm mixing metaphors, but so I decided I would focus on elderly characters in this book, and I would project it to be that they would behave the way I would hope Rick and I would be able to behave when we reach that point.
So one did on the other.
Yeah.
Terry, you said that the quilts or the stories of the quilts are part of the books.
They will
Can you
be.
tell the story of any of these quilts?
I do. In this book,
Yeah.
I do
Read a
tell the
little
story.
bit.
You want me to read one of them?
Read a little bit.
Okay. I'll read, I made a quilt called The 9 of Us. There were 9 children in my parents' family, and I am the 5th. I have a sister born in 41, a brother born in 42, another sister born in 44, another brother born in 45. I was born in 1950, only 2 months into 1950. Had I been born 2 months earlier, I would clearly have been part of the 40s. But no, I'm part of the 50s. I had a sister born in 53, 52, a sister born in 55, another sister born in 58, the one you know,
Yes.
and a little brother born in 59. They all grew up here in Georgetown. I grew up in South Boston. I went to parochial school with the sisters. We all went to public school. I consider myself part of the older half of my family. The older half of my family is diminishing rapidly now. I've lost 3 siblings. I still have a sister, Marilyn, who's quite healthy, well, and I call myself Marilyn's here. And my younger sisters and brothers who grew up in a time where Massachusetts allowed 18-year-olds to go to bars. I couldn't do that. I was with the nuns. Well, not when I was 18, but they were still there. So I considered myself part of the older part. So here's the story of the 9 of us in quilt language. And Actually, that quilt is over here under the books about multiple sclerosis. We were 9, like a set of stairs. Spread over 2 decades, we were born. From the oldest sister, Kay, who fed the birds as often as we did, to the youngest brother, Jack. And when I say we, I mean Rick and I. Who loves to play golf with his family. We all grew in different directions and took on different personalities. I made this quilt during the 9 days before school began, a block a day. The quilt, like every quilt, has a story and an identity. My sister Betty was able to figure out the story of this quilt, and my daughter's friend had a clue of which house was mine, given the snow and Trish's house in Maine. Betty thought the quilt story ought to be told, and so it is here. The coolest place on a scorcher in August is in Rick's barn, and that's where I plan to spend the last days of summer vacation. We had sorted and dusted and swept and cleared the front of the barn to create our craft shop, our place to show and perhaps sell wooden toys and gifts. Few customers stopped in, as we don't keep regular hours, but now and then someone stops by and finds us there, and we chat. There was no one out walking by the shop that hot summer day, so I cleared off the display table and set up my cutting board. The table had been my mother's kitchen table, longer when she kept 2 leaves in it to accommodate the house full present for Sunday dinners each week. It stands now without the leaves and accommodates a tabletop of items made by Rick only. But today it would hold scraps of materials, and later my sewing machine. I had no idea yet what the quilt was going to be. But there was no rush, no deadline. There were still 9 days of vacation left before the final weekend and schools reopening. I spread out some florals and solids, novelty prints, checks, plaids, all remnants. I found a piece of plaid from a worn shirt Rick had set aside, and I smiled as I thought about using it to build a block. I decided to build a house block. And I went into the house to find one of my quilter's books, one where I knew I would see some ideas for a house block. The short walk between the house and the barn was stifling, and when I returned to the work table, I decided I would make a winter house block, cool, refreshing. Winter is my favorite season. I used some leftover fabric from the snowman quilt I had made for my classroom. I found some scraps of the cardinal print and a fat quarter of night sky with stars, and I put it all together, and I made what I would call my house. In honor of the cardinals that we fed all winter, I made it like a birdhouse, with a round circular opening instead of a door and windows. I set up the machine and pieced the block together and took a picture of it. It looked cozy and safe. I emailed that picture then to my friend Paula, a true quilter who works solely by hand and makes beautiful heirlooms for her family and friends, and I asked her what she thought. She and her 2 young daughters gave me a thumbs up, and I promised to send them a picture of the next block the next day. And so I had begun my small email mentors and support. The next day I worked with some bright yellow fabric and a starry print left over from my grandson's lightning bolt quilt, and made what I would call my parents' house in the sky, where they and perhaps my brother were now enjoying heavenly tea together. I sent it off to the quilt mentors, and they again responded positively. The following day, the meat square also honored a couple, Kay and Kip, who fed the birds generously, and so they too had a birdhouse door. My sister and her husband had downsized, moving to a smaller home, transferring their larger home to their son and grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren. The pattern went quickly. The background was a piece of fabric with tiny birds and birdhouses on it, and I sent the photo to the girls and received their support and encouragement to keep going. I had some soft pink and floral fabrics left from the quilt I made for a woman in a nursing home, and so I chose those pieces for my sister Rosemary, who is a diligent end-of-life hospice nurse advocate. My son had once told us that she ought to have a pink house, and so she would in the quilt. The pink pastels and florals that later created Ro's house block had been given to the woman who was the mother of a nurse that Ro knew, and her daughter had known and cared for my parents, and her mother had become my mother-in-law's roommate, and it's a small world after all. Another day brought out the beautiful purple pansy and prints pansy and print that was requested by my mother-in-law's other roommate. A passion for purple she had, as does my sister Betty. So that house of purple pieces was designated as Betty's. The same blend of purple and pansies had also been used to make a quilt for Rick's Aunt Belinda in Florida, who is a crafty person herself. The Nemo print fabric had been used when I made a quilt for a teacher who was going in for hip surgery, and all of these other quilts that I mentioned are in the journal so that you can flip back and read about them. That quilt was made of envelope blocks with flaps that opened, and each fabric envelope held a get well card from my students. And since Pat is also a teacher and hosts the family gatherings at her pool for summer holidays, her house block features the water fabric and Nemo images. The next block used remnants from a humorous quilt, again made from my classroom wall, which is also over here on the left, featuring a print of comical bugs, some dressed as bookworms, others dressed as army ants. I had fussy cut the bugs from the background and placed them carefully in a shadow box log cabin arrangement, and I called it Bugs in Windows. The leafy background made a beautiful tropical background for my sister Mel's house block, who loves to cruise to tropical places, with a small pale print for a sandy footing that I know she would like. And that left 2 squares to go from my 2 brothers' homes. Palardy had always hosted a large family gathering on Christmas night, so the gingerbread cookie fabric remnants seemed well suited as I pieced it together and remembered the Christmas that I had knit teddy bear and reindeer patterned sweaters for all the little boy cousins and all their little bears. Somewhere we have a picture of that group on the couch in Bob's living room on Christmas night. The cookie fabric had been from an infant quilt that I and my stitching circle girls after school had made to donate to the neonatal unit at a local hospital for the holidays. And then Jack, the youngest, had the very last block to be built. It was made of bright, vivid colors, as versatile and handsome as he is to this day. Its setting of bright green grass and promising blue sky suits the golfer in him and in his life. They find that healthy outlet wherever they live. Those fabrics were left from costumes that I made for school play, to dress players in shawls and ascots in the French town, French town folk in Beauty and the Beast. And that being the 9th block and the 9th day, the last day of summer vacation, I emailed my mentors and sent 2 more pictures, one of the squares against a sunny yellow background and one against a leafy green print. The girls chose the green, and I was happy with that, as it was a firm, solid footing for all of our houses to rest on, with only our parents' house separated from the ground, off in the heavens of that starry fabric, but still connected to each of our homes. I don't always have a plan for a quilt until I start. Like my stories, each quilt evolves in its own time and becomes its own story. This one has its turn now and then on the wall in my classroom, where an observant student will notice that the season's change has brought in a new quilt. I'll write more about the classroom quilts in a later chapter. So many quilts, so many stories. It is peaceful to sit in a window and share. And that quilt I'll hold up for you. I do want to share what I wrote on the back cover of this book, because I do quilt and I do write, and I see a lot in common between those 2 activities. Every quilt has its story. I've read that statement in many places, and I have added to it, and every story must have its writer. Quilting and writing go hand in hand. Both require equal measures of patience and creativity, though the skill sets for each are distinctly different. Both require practice. Quilters must learn to stitch evenly, and writers must learn to compose clearly. Quilters benefit from viewing others' quilts, and writers benefit from reading others' stories. There are no mistakes in quilting, I would say to my young students. There are always opportunities to unstitch and restitch. And there are no failures in writing, I would tell my students. There is always time to take a piece and make it even better. Both pursuits require and in time build the quality of patience and satisfaction in one's efforts. Quilts and writing each offer as much to the artist as to the audience. Every quilt has a story to be shared, and here you'll find some of mine. That's the book. This is the first book that I have incorporated color pictures in. And because I put colored pictures in this, and self-published it through Amazon's program called CreateSpace, the price was incredibly different. When I do a small book like this, which is quite small, with no pictures, the cost for this book for me might be $2.50, and then I get to sell it at a profit. When I write a longer book, like these two, the price with no pictures of these books might be $3.50 for me, and I get to sell it at a higher price. But because this had colored pictures in it, rather than $2 or $3, I had to pay $11 and some change to get this. And even I priced this at $15.99 in my shop. Amazon has priced this at $24 or $25. I think that's outrageous for a paperback book this thick. I wouldn't pay it. And if I sell it at $15 or $15.99, I'm making a few dollars on it, and that's good enough for me. I don't know why they price it in electronics. I can't connect those two prices. The others they let me price. This is the only one they told me the price for. They wouldn't let it be lower than 20 cents. So it has to do with the colored pictures. And so I will be very conservative in colored pictures that come up. So most of the quilts and the stories that are come are here in this book. So this book is really going to be a collector's book because I'm not going to repeat all of them. I might put one or two in for a particular story and tie it into a quilt.
Terry, if you like cluster all the pictures in one section like you see books do sometimes, rather than putting it with the story, would that make it less costly?
I don't know. When I published this as an ebook on Amazon, some of the pictures didn't come through well with Kindle. Some of them are blacked out. So when I submitted to Smashwords, which is an online site which will e-format a book for any e-reader, Sony and Mobi, and I don't even know what they are, Nooks and Kindles. They're all different languages. And they'll put it through, they call it the meat grinder. And it spits out all these different formats. I didn't put any pictures in it. I put the stories in it. And I had to do a little editing so it didn't say the quilt above. I just, described the quilt a little bit. I didn't put any pictures in that, and it went through so that it could be sold at like $3 or $4.
Did you have a special paper that would make the colors look better and all that, or is it the same paper as the others?
The book is printed on the same paper as the others. They will print it with a higher quality paper, and the price will go up.
See, I'm about to start mine, and
Yeah.
I need to have extremely good illustrations, so I suspect mine is going to come out very pricey.
It's like a coffee table book. They're all very pricey. They're $50, $60, $70. 23, I was just astonished. I can't imagine at 50 or 60 what that would be.
The posters behind you are beautiful.
Thank you. Those are from Vistaprint, with whom I get free shipping because I order so much stuff from Vistaprint.
Did they mount them, or did you mount them?
No, they did.
They did.
And they are either blank-sided, or if you get a double-sided one, it's only $3 more. I think it's $3 to have a picture that's different than the others. It's a pretty reasonable price to deal with. I want to show you this family quilt now that I have nicely set up the table. But that's all right. I just need these little piles so I can show you my family's houses. Robbie was about 4 and he said Rosemary should live in a house. Aww. Here's my sister Kay. Kay has gone to heaven this year. She had 3 years ago. She had a kidney failure. And my brother Bob, he went to heaven 6 weeks before she did. He had cancer. It was a very hard time. And my brother Dickie has been in heaven with my father and mother since they died. But Dickie died when he was 28 in 1977. Two?
We were married 2 years.
We were married 2 years, so 73. Okay. We were married 2 years when Dick died. He died actually in a fire in Connecticut, which was devastating for my father. He was a fire chief in Boston. It was smoke inhalation. He was not a firefighter. He was a teenage counselor. This is my brother Jack, my handsome brother Jack. Look at those beautiful colors for Jack's house.
That's the baby of the family.
Baby of the family, yes. And these colors were all part of the ascots and the shawls for the French country people in Boost. This was from Tristan's lightning quilt, which you'll see it's a lot of cabinets arranged in a zigzag pattern. Betty loves purple, and so my mother-in-law's roommate, who also loved purple, had asked for a purple passion quilt, so Betty's remnants made up that quilt.
The blue must be Pat.
Pat is Nemo,
Yeah.
the swimming pool, yes, because she hosts us every July 4th, and she has a beautiful swimming pool in her backyard.
Is there one that's yours?
Yes, yes,
This is yours.
this is mine,
Well, that's yours.
because I love winter, and
Okay, with the
Trisha
winter and
lives
the
up
birds
in
and.
Maine, where it's always winter, and this is mud season. It's either winter or mud up there.
Or ice season as it is.
For August.
That's
August.
Or August.
Yes, snow and ice or mud, that's what you get.
I love the
You
winter.
can put that one, you haven't shown that one yet in our quilt shows, have
I
you?
haven't?
That's fine.
Well, I
Yeah,
should.
think so.
I love
It's like
this because the back is flannel, and it's really nice to have in your lap. It's made as a lap quilt, and I prefer laps to walls for most of my quilts.
So this is the bottom left corner.
Bottom left is my brother Bob, who always hosted us on Christmas night,
It's close.
wherever we lived, except when we lived in New York City. We didn't go there occasionally.
That's so neat.
Yeah, and I didn't have a plan. It was hot, I wanted it to be cool. I started with the first block, which was ours, and went from there.
I love the bird in that one. Is that a fussy cut little bird?
Yes, I had a piece of fabric that has cardinals on it,
Yeah.
so I cut them out, glued them on, and sewed them on.
Well, I assume that you might be willing to offer some books for sale in case some of us don't have all of them.
Well,
already.
I didn't bring all of my books. I will be talking about my poetry book at the Buttonwoods Museum in April. April is National Poetry Month. And I have two books of poetry. One is really basically about family. And a lot of them are the people that I've introduced to you through the quilt. I've written poems about them. And so if you want to hear about those, I'll be at Buttonwoods the first week.
You may be going to Danvers too, right?
Danvers in July, the New England Author Expo will be there. In May, I'll be back to Buttonwoods again. We're doing memoirs, and I'll talk about my love story memoir about MS. I mean, it's not a happy story, but it is a happy story because this man is in my life and has been forever. I mean, we became friends, best friends, when we were about 16. We were up at St. Mary's Church. He was in the back of the church selling newspapers, and I was downstairs taking care of little ones. It's a picture of who we are. And we became good friends, and we started dating when we were 17, and we became engaged when we were 18, and we were married at 20. We've been together a long time. We still have 15 years to go, I guess. Catch up with her on the name.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Please help yourself.